Dan
Good
from
morning.
Albuquerque Business First.
That's
We're
it.
down to business. It's Monday.
That's it. Yeah, starting off the week with some crazy bad news in some ways. All the numbers we've been getting are really interesting this week. We got our cover story this week is about, you call it economic diversity. And in our case, we have none. We're kind of, it's like a two-trick pony in New Mexico's economy. It's either government or Intel. And that's kind of it right now. We're trying to figure out ways and trying to just really start the discussion and see what happens and trying to get people motivated to bring out ideas about how to diversify the economy. In New Mexico, in Albuquerque, 22% of all of our employees are government employees. And that's way higher than all of our peer sister cities. You know, Salt Lake City's at 15%. I mean, there's government towns too, but our percentage of government employees is way higher. And then of all of our trade in the state, about $3 billion worth of trade every year, half of that comes from just Intel.
Wow.
We are really in a comfort zone, aren't we?
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
And we like our comfort zone.
Yeah,
Well, at least we have until now.
we have. And the government shutdown really made a point of showing us how dependent we are on things that are really beyond our control. And so now the state's trying to come up with ways to basically diversify the economy and find new ways to bring what they call economic-based jobs to the state. Guys like this right here. This is Vern Rayburn on the screen right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's back. He's interesting. You know, he was the guy who started Eclipse.
Right.
And he built the airplane. He was the guy who, you know, he took that company to 2,100 employees. Of course, they did go bankrupt, but not many guys can say they built an airplane.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
260 of them, and they're all flying. They're still flying today, so that's pretty amazing.
You know, Vern's a great story. A man had a passion and dream to do something different
Absolutely.
in the aviation industry, and he made it happen, even though it turned out to be kind of a Steve Jobs Apple thing where the company actually ended up firing him.
Yes, absolutely.
And that had to hurt. I can't imagine how bad that would hurt.
Well, in his case, when we talked about it, and this news story is about him, he's now taking over their drone manufacturer that's actually up in Moriarty. And they're doing solar-powered drones. He's still involved in aviation. And we were talking about it, and basically in Vern's case, when they started Eclipse back in 2002, they had this idea for a certain kind of engine, and that engine didn't work. It cost the company $500 million.
Oh, wow.
One misstep cost $500 million.
That's a big mistake.
Absolutely. And it was beyond his control, beyond
Yeah.
Eclipse's control. And then, of course, by 2008, the economy went south, and all of that combined to really hurt the company. And, it was one of those things, and luckily now we were able to keep in New Mexico that engineering expertise. We were able to keep the factory here, and the new Eclipse is going. And they're now producing planes. Actually, they're starting to deliver them. Supposedly in the fourth quarter of this year, they're going to deliver the brand new Eclipses, which is awesome and amazing. And then Titan, the new group that Vern is working with, by next year they're going to have some of their new planes flying. They're crazy. They're solar-powered drones. They're amazing. With a wingspan, it's the same as the 787s.
Really?
And they can stay aloft.
Huge.
For me, yeah. And they have so many solar panels on them and so many batteries. They can stay aloft for almost a year.
Huh.
If not longer. And you can fly these things around. You put a cell phone tower on, and you can fly immediately.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I know.
There's some
Solar
interesting
powered cell phone.
applications.
Oh, absolutely. It's amazing stuff. It's amazing stuff that he's
amazing.
doing.
So they're out at the little airport in Moriarty.
That's
They're
it.
doing this.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. I love
really neat.
reading about and writing about this new kind of interesting engineering that you hear about.
Well, I just remember so well, Vern and his wife were involved in the company. He gave me a personal tour of Eclipse back in those days.
Yeah.
And just a really nice man. And to his credit, after all that fell apart, he stayed in New Mexico.
He did, and I don't think a lot of people realize that he stayed. You know,
Yeah.
he kind of disappeared off the radar, no pun
Yes.
intended. But he just hung out up in these mountains, and he's actually been doing, and this blows my mind, he's competing in international glider competitions now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's one of the best flying areas up there in these mountains.
Yeah.
And there's a local glider community, and they call them sailplanes.
Uh-huh.
And you can compete in these competitions with people from around the world, and he's been doing that. And the glider
interesting.
the glider group here actually took first place in the World Championships last year. and he was one of the members of that team.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I know. I love what these
A
guys
few
end up
years
doing.
ago, my wife gave me a glider ride for Christmas, and we did it out there in Moriarty.
Oh, that's really
and
neat.
it was a great experience,
Oh,
especially when
yeah.
that cable pops off the plane and off you go.
Oh yeah, and then it just gets so quiet.
It is.
Yes, it's amazing
It's
stuff.
really quiet. Well, I'm glad you have Vern on the radar screen. And did you get a chance to talk to him?
Absolutely. We talked for almost an hour just the other day, and I saw him the other night, and he's going, and he was at the New Mexico Venture Capital meeting the other night trying to raise funds for the new company. He's trying to get a second round of financing together, trying to raise almost $100 million to get Titan off the ground, which is amazing. You know, of course, he's no stranger to raising money. He raised almost $2 billion when he was with Eclipse, so $100 million's nothing for a guy like that.
What was the response like with the
people
venture
loved
capitalists?
it. People
They
loved
were
it.
Yeah.
pretty excited
Oh,
about
absolutely.
it?
It's
Good.
rare that you find a company and an executive that understands not only just that they have an interesting technology, but there's a market for it also.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people, they just try to sell the technology and not realizing that there are people, in his case, they're thinking communications mainly. And it's rare to find that guy who can get both
Do
together.
both, yeah.
So is this going to translate into any kind of manufacturing or jobs or anything like that, or is it
We don't
just
know yet.
too
It's
too
way
soon?
too early. Way
Yeah.
too early.
It's
We'll
just
see if
one
he
of
gets
those
the money.
neat tech
Yeah.
companies that.
It should be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, you know, all the stuff that's going on at UNM right now with the Innovate ABQ.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, could be one of the most interesting big deals to happen to the city in a long time. The mayor calls it the biggest thing to happen to economic development in 20 years. Innovate ABQ is going to be basically a business factory that UNM is creating. And several sites around that they have proposed for it. One of them is just up the street here at Central and Broadway, the old Baptist church site there. 7.5 acres, and they could do a lot there. What's interesting about it is not just a business incubator. There would be dorms for the entrepreneurs to live in. There would be restaurants and retail on site. And the whole idea is that you get entrepreneurs who are experienced, along with new guys, students in their case from UNM, to all collide, and you know, you
Come up with
create
these great
those.
ideas,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
And you create those collisions in the coffee shop, in the retail shop, in the dorm, and hopefully create new companies and new businesses that way. And it could be this amazing thing. You know, it's cities got some skin in the game now. You know, voters a couple weeks ago, we put $2 million into it. The senior living and public buildings bond.
Okay.
$2 million of that
Yes.
is going to Innovate ABQ.
Now this was the old Science and Technology Corporation. right?
Kind of. That's
Yeah.
its own thing, and it's going to be brought in
It's part
of
it, yeah.
to the new Innovate ABQ.
That
and
was
that's-
a UNM entity, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's still that's still around and it's still up on university, and they're going to wrap that into this.
Okay.
It has what's called the Office of Technology Transfer in it. And the Office of Tech Transfer is where, if you're a professor at UNM and you come up with a brilliant idea, patent something very cool, you can take your patentable idea there, and they will help you spin that off into a company.
Which is pretty amazing.
It's amazing stuff, yeah. And they do about 16 companies a year. And by taking that and bringing that to Innovate ABQ, they're hoping that because of those collisions and everything else, that you can create more and more companies, and then you have the office, the SDC office, right on site to help everybody. That way you don't have to, you know, drive from campus to somewhere else and back and forth and deal with it. They're right there, and you can fill out the paperwork and get it done. Should be, you know, very interesting thing.
When are they looking at kicking it off, starting this?
That's one of the things. So they are, the first step, we're moving it to Mesa del Sol. And that could happen as early as next year at the old Aperture building out there. And UNM owns most of that building already.
Oh,
And it's kind of purpose-built already for this. And the grander idea down the road is to keep that as an incubator site. And then Mesa del Sol is purpose-built for manufacturing. Be great. So you develop a lot of these companies who want to do light manufacturing. They're ideal right there at Mesa del Sol. And then the second outpost would be hopefully downtown, if Bob Frank has his way. He wants to live, work, play space for it. You know, it'd be right next to the entertainment district downtown, and it would be just a couple of blocks from campus, and then around all the live area there too in East Downtown.
That would be
It'd
perfect.
be ideal, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to live there myself.
Albuquerque's downtown area is a great place to
Yes,
live.
absolutely.
And we were just kind of talking about some of the bigger businesses in Albuquerque and New Mexico, and you were just mentioning that Walmart
has 22,000 employees in the state.
That
They're the
is
largest
unreal.
private employer in New Mexico. And they're not all full-time employees, some are part-time, but
Sure.
the numbers are staggering for Walmart when you consider there's just under 20,000 people that are employed at both the federal labs,
Yeah,
you know?
it's amazing.
Yeah, the numbers are amazing when you consider it. But there's 1 million Walmart stores around, you know?
Yeah.
The problem is those are not the jobs the state is trying to recruit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They were the jobs a while back that the state wanted, but they're not what you call the economic base job. And they're actually they're taking money out of the state to somewhere else. And we're trying to get those jobs and create those industries that bring money into the state, new money
Right.
into the state. And that's a real challenge right now. And that's why things like Innovate ABQ are important to talk about, because they will be creating businesses that will be bringing in money here, investment here, and building wealth here rather than shipping it out of state somewhere else.
But I mean, that is true. But aren't jobs, and that's good, and it
They are
gives
and they're
people
not.
work.
And this is one of the debates we have, you know. In some ways, when you look at the raw economic numbers, it's wonderful that we have Canon coming. We talked about that last time I was here, you know, and they have 150 new employees that they're going to be bringing to their call center. Awesome. But that, in terms of the economic benefit that brings, all of the money, yes, it is coming from out of state, and that is an economic-based job, which is bringing in new money, but it's not creating wealth here. And when you bring in and build up something like an Eclipse, like we were talking about earlier, or MCOR is the perfect example. MCOR's technology came out of San Diego National Labs, and Dr. Hong Ho, who was there, developed the solar technology they use. So it's locally developed, homegrown, and now they're publicly traded, and they're worth $250 billion. It's a huge company, and they're doing great manufacturing here and overseas, and that has created this wellspring of wealth in New Mexico. And those are the kinds of jobs and the kinds of companies we're trying to create now, rather than the companies that just bring in some of the real lower paying jobs and the jobs that don't necessarily build anything on that. You got to get jobs in industries that you can build on. And that's one of the scary things. Our manufacturing sector is all but dead right now. A major part of that is water security. We don't have much water, and that's what you really need for a lot of manufacturing. So we're trying to do other things now, like develop software, develop apps, develop more, things that don't use water as much. Light manufacturing is a good sector to start looking at right now.
Can we be brutally honest too and say that our workforce is not the highest educated workforce around?
And that's one of the things that we've been working on. You know, for years the state has been talking about STEM education. You guys have talked about that on the show.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
just to throw my little 2 cents in there is, I actually tried to push legislation this last legislature, to try to keep STEM students inside of New Mexico and giving incentives to businesses to keep STEM students inside New Mexico. And it's crazy is that I got a lot of pushback on it. It doesn't make sense, but...
Well, that's one of the things, too, when I was talking to President Bob Frank about the Innovate ABQ. And that's one of his ideas, to stop the brain drain.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of these students who are
It's
really
huge in the
smart.
state.
Yeah, and you have that guy who is, say, 22, coming out of UNM, brilliant computer scientist, develops that wonderful app, and he uses these, high-level math and science skills to do it, things he's learned at UNM. Where's he going to go once he graduates? He's going to go to San Francisco. He's going to go to Seattle, where the Googles and the Microsofts of the world are. But if you can create a place where he can stay here and build his business here, grow his career here, then we get to keep those people here. And that's one of the main ideas with Innovate ABQ, is to stop that brain drain. It's worked in other places too. In Gainesville, Florida, where they're stealing this model from, borrowing, copying, stealing.
Yeah,
Good.
However
if it helps
however
in
you
one
can do
place,
it.
then might as well try it out in
However
another
you want to
place.
do it,
Yeah.
absolutely. And this innovation hub idea, it seems to be working there. They've graduated in just 2 years, 14 companies, and some of them are pretty amazing, with 40 employees, 50 employees already. There's one called Shadow Health that just came out of there that does real interesting healthcare work. And there were people that probably would have left Florida that were able to create their businesses there, and that's exactly what they're trying to do here now. And STEM is a major part of that. So yeah, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics